All right, welcome to my channel again. As you can probably see, the this reaction will be to a video called "Men Are Slowly Giving Up and Nobody Cares" from a channel called, I think it's called Moon. Yeah, seems like a good one. I'm already subscribed to it. So let's check this one out. Why are men giving up? What's going on?
Giving up. Giving up on relationships, careers, and society as a whole. Resentment is growing, unemployment is becoming rampant, and keeping your head above water seems almost impossible for many men today. This is leading to more men than ever dropping out of society entirely. And it's not just that, men are becoming infantilized. With terms like adulting now becoming normal, it's clear that something ugly is happening that needs to be addressed. We live in such a strained, unnatural environment that is bound to start to wear on society, but men in particular are battling to keep up and are slowly giving up. Giving up on dreams, giving up on trying, and giving up on doing anything constructive. And for a large part, it's really not their fault, as this trend isn't just a personal struggle, but a societal issue that we must urgently address. So why is this happening? And why has it gotten so bad in 2024? On the surface, it's a long and complicated story. Life has never been simple for any human, and objectively speaking, for men in the West today, it's never been better. We have all the technology we need, food delivered to your door with the tap of a finger, dating readily available to anyone with a simple swipe. Any products, items, or experiences that you want can be had with the tap of your phone. But over time, all of these comforts of life destroys the
The thing is, all this stuff, it always comes at a cost.
importance and necessity of struggle, without any value placed on higher goals. Where there just is no reason to care, means there's no reason for people to properly live or have the will to achieve greatness. Which is probably why 40% of young men aged 18 to 45 meet the criteria for depression, and 49% of 18 to 23-year-olds have had a thought of
Wow.
passing themselves in the past 2 weeks alone. And we're
It's
seeing the
sad, but
symptoms of this
I'm not
problem
really
everywhere. The
surprised.
sapping away of our vision and ambition permeates in all aspects of modern society today. Our culture, architecture, relationships, bodies and minds. Past civilizations before us have always placed their emphasis on beauty, wisdom and logic for all the population to see, with great town squares, bustling with art, life and community. These things were placed above all else as the bedrock of their societies, laying out a code of honor and struggle in its people to achieve greatness. Comforts were shown in art and culture, but as an aspiration for achieving something great, for following your mastery. But today our cities are mostly devoid of all of this character, and instead they're marked out by the most cost-efficient, bland and sterile designs to facilitate a simpler, self-motivated purpose. It's why people flock all over the world to a handful of remaining cities that retain their centuries-old charm to feel and experience the character of bygone societies that were motivated by higher ideals. Ideals greater than our modern two-dimensional ways of thinking. With a prioritization of comfort, lust and opulence, and flashy materialism over individual excellence and greater community, we're now reeling in the aftermath, becoming instead a generation of mandated mediocrity. And does this explain why men today seem to struggle more than ever while seemingly having more than ever? America in particular is not actually in a recession. In fact, on paper, the economy looks like the best it's been in a while. Unemployment has dropped, GDP is up, but what the people are actually experiencing is a completely different story. We can see this in a study by the University of Michigan on consumer sentiments, which gathers data based on how consumers feel about the current state of finances. In 2022, it dropped to an all-time low. Prices of our average daily needs like gas and food have increased an unbearable.
Yeah, because what's happening is that the economy in is changing, and it's doing better on paper, but there's there seems to be now a deviation happening where, despite the general economy going up, the living standards are not. That seems to be what's happening.
Percentages. In contrast, salary increases do not.
Britain, we stink. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The rental market, tragic. The
Is it
economy,
me, or are there
stinks.
substantially
Cheaper
more
flights to the
adverts
Bahamas than a train
on
ticket to Blackpool.
YouTube these days?
And on top of that, you got to listen to your producer.
And more unskippable ones too.
Match, putting a high strain on budgets.
Inflation is showing no signs of slowing down as Americans pay over $1,000 a month more on the same essentials we were buying 3 years ago. Nothing's changed but price. The latest consumer price index for March showing basic necessities like our food, housing, and gas are all continuing to cripple Americans' wallets with higher prices.
Our wages are actually down against inflation since Biden took office. So not only are prices soaring, but
that's the thing. You look at
wages,
those,
at least
you look at those figures, and they're like usually like quarterly figures or even annual figures. So when you compare them, like say like to what things were, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, right? And the difference is huge because the cumulative percentage increases are huge. So you could like feel like, you know, you're paying double or more for the same thing that you would have paid for, like, say, 2, 3, 4 years ago.
if you measure hourly wages, are not keeping up at all.
Keeping your head above water has become the new normal instead of owning a home with a white picket fence. The rich are becoming richer and the poor are becoming poorer, with the middle class disintegrating completely. All the knowledge of the past of just going to college, getting a job, and buying a home immediately is just completely irrelevant for anyone working and living in 2024. Universities have skyrocketed in prices to absurd levels. The housing market is in a complete giant bubble. Everyone's sending out job applications more and more, all while using these automated testing systems, applying up to 100 jobs a day and still not getting.
Also, another thing I've seen that's become really, really common now is if you go and want to buy something on a website, right? And nowadays it seems to range like for a abundance of things, you know, whether it's something you're spending like $10 on or $500 on, what happens is that you'll see that there's an option to do like these I don't know, I forgot what it's called. It's not really like a payday loan. It's not like but it's kind of like the pay later deals. You know, you can like buy now and pay in 30 days, or you can, you know, they'll give you the option to like pay in 3 or 4 installments or over a 6 month period or whatever without the use of a credit card. You know, there's even like some of these companies even have their own apps now at this point. Yeah.
Anywhere. All the while major companies repeatedly tell us that they can't find any
In my
workers for their
opinion, those things are a
companies.
bad
And the results
sign,
of this
but
are clear. People are drifting towards more
perhaps I'm
unfulfilling
mistaken.
jobs, or just not even having a job at all, while the rich buy up resources, real estate, and everything that used to be the cornerstones of the middle class that is now just an investment hidden through an offshore bank account for some giant investment fund.
Basically, what they want to do is create a nation of renters. BlackRock coming in and giving them more money than the house is worth.
How much more do they give them?
They can give them, 30% above.
Really?
Which is money.
And then they just
it's
lease those
BlackRock.
homes out.
And they lease them out. It's part of this idea that home ownership and automobile ownership and all of these things, these legacy systems that people want to get rid of. And they go, rent a house, use Uber, Lyft, whatever. You don't need to own. What does owning do for you? That's that famous article, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Right.
And because of this, all saving plans for regular people are halted because living paycheck to paycheck means there just isn't enough for a savings plan. And whilst there is still some hope to dig your way out, for most this does begin a damaged path. People end up working in a job that's not in their field, something that they hate to do every day, and eliminates the experience they need for the job in their field. And so even the experience they are getting is just completely useless for getting back on track. In effect, they're now entering.
New Head & Shoulders delivers up to 100% dandruff
Yeah, I mean,
protection.
while this ad
Clinically
plays,
For a tasty and crispy
like currently
this
I'm
is
doing
my good
something
choice.
that
No, I
isn't
hate
really
your goodness.
a passion of
position
mine,
is
but I
further
do it.
deviating them from
I do it just because it brings the money in, right? It keeps you afloat. And I think a lot of people are in a similar position with that.
lawyers, psychologists, or whichever career path they studied for. And if the middle class is experiencing this, then the lower earners are feeling this even more. The jobs they once had a chance of landing now go to the middle class, while they get hit a bump lower, which is putting millions of people in dire straits. They face working twice as hard for minimum wage, juggling between jobs, partaking in the gig economy with absolutely no security, all with an extreme pressure to keep up with daily expenses in a completely overpriced megacity.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I'm in the UK. In the UK, the way it is right now is we have something called zero-hour contracts, where whereby you don't have a guaranteed amount of hours that you work. So what that means is that it's really essentially a contract that's extremely biased towards the employer. So what they can do is hire a lot more people than they actually need, and then once they can decide, you know, to work a bunch of a large number of the people they employed initially, then they can see who is kind of like is an overworker or an overachiever. Then they have the kind of uh, the people in the middle, and then they have the people that are the underworkers or underachievers, or maybe they're like really antisocial or something like that, and they can kind of filter those people out, kind of like at the bottom on the lower range, and then slowly, like or quickly, depending on the company, um, filter people out. So it's really, really biased towards people, and it's really um, not good for employees because you essentially you don't know if you'll be getting any hours, say, in a couple of months' time. So it's really, really extremely insecure. So it means that you can't really create a future for yourself. You can't really have a solid plan for anything. Um, more than a week or a month in advance. Yeah.
And the truth is, both middle and lower earners are now taking a huge hit to their egos. They feel disrespected through no fault of their own, as no man wants to feel like a failure. They don't want to feel like they're not providing or on their destiny. Imagine putting in the hours and effort to get a degree and then having to take a job that's not even within the field you studied for. Well, this is just regular life for most people nowadays. It's making men feel incredibly depressed and isolated. They watch all this stuff on social.
And you see what happens as well is that a lot of men will experience what he mentions in the video, and they will lock themselves away. What that means is they will not be meeting any kind of potential female partners, which means that there's a knock-on effect that people are having less kids. You see, and people are having less kids, then the elites decide they have this excuse to import a lot more migrants, then eventually illegal migrants, and things kind of roll downhill from there.
Media, they see people flexing the Rolexes on their Instagram stories. Meanwhile, they're struggling to survive, living a life they absolutely hate. And when friends and family ask about it, they suffer the humiliation of explaining why they had to take what was available. Even though it isn't humiliating at all, and they're doing what they can to survive, it definitely takes a huge effect on their mental health. Especially as it wasn't that long ago, where it was actually normal to enter the workforce with a mentor who would show you the ropes and encourage you and push you to learn more. Starting at the bottom didn't seem so bad because there was an opportunity to grow and reap more rewards. But this
is the thing, this is what I've noticed nowadays in the job market, is that it seems like people are not willing to train anybody. And when they are willing, they want to do the bare minimum. So companies only want to take on as much of a finished product as possible. You see, hence you have ridiculous job adverts where they'll say entry level, but you need, 2 or 3 years experience in that same position, or you'll need 1 year of experience, but you'll need to have knowledge of a particularly like very niche industry or subject area specific application, or what you will.
imperative step is slowly slipping away. Companies of prestige have forgotten the generation with no experience. And for many companies, this is what they want. This is actually the ideal scenario, where they have people so desperate, so in need of experience, that they can treat their workers like absolute trash. Since the 1980s, testosterone levels have dropped more than 50%, and yet we're told to ignore it. Why? Because there's a
Why do you
coordinated
think
effort to
everything that
suppress
he just
masculinity and
this is the thing, like he's going to go into things, and I'm sure like he's probably going to be accurate, but why does testosterone go down or decline? Everything that he just explained. You see, so when because our mental health, not just for men, but for all people, our mental health is connected to our physical health. You know, so if we feel like we can see a goal ahead and we're working towards something, and we're in a position where you know that we don't feel as like too far beneath us, what happens is that we have some sort of drive or motivation, right? And that drive and motivation that helps keep the testosterone levels up. Just saying.
turn men into something they were never meant to be. This decline is no
Oh,
accident.
God.
We're constantly exposed to harmful chemicals in our food and everyday products, bombarded with estrogenic chemicals from plastics, junk food, and sedentary
That too.
lifestyles.
Once I gave
which
up
is why testosterone
potato
levels have been
chips or
declining
crisps,
for
as they're called
decades,
in the
with a
UK,
17% drop among 60-year-olds in
stopped
2004
liking them.
compared to
Just stopped
1987.
eating them.
Sperm count and strength in men are also decreasing exponentially, with a 32.5% decrease in mean sperm concentration in the last 50 years. But here's the good news: there are ways to fight back, and one of the most effective solutions that I found is our sponsor Black Forest's Testosterone with Tonkat Ali.
What adverts?
This supplement is packed with two of the most powerful natural
Never
testosterone
tried
boosters
this one.
available. Testosterone is a natural anabolic
I do
compound
work
that
out,
helps
but
increase
I
muscle
usually,
growth, boost recovery, and support higher
time to
testosterone
time,
levels.
most of the time, I'm not
Tonkat Ali,
using
used for
anything.
centuries, helps raise testosterone, reduce
I'm not
stress, and
using
improve
any
overall
supplements.
vitality. I've been using Black Forest's
But
Testosterone and Tonkat Ali, and I've noticed a
when
huge
I do,
improvement in
I
my energy,
only
strength, and
mix
focus.
in
It's like getting back the edge that modern life is
whey
just draining
protein
away. Right now, Black Forest is offering a buy
and
two, get one free deal on
sometimes
this limited
creatine.
edition product, and once it's gone for good. I can
But
personally
probably
vouch for its
about
effectiveness. It's had a huge
half the
difference in my
time,
energy levels, strength, sleep,
for
and
half of
overall
the year, I
well-being.
don't
And by
use
supporting
anything.
our sponsors, you also support us directly. So hurry and take advantage of this amazing 48-hour promo and support me alongside this amazing brand using the link in the description below. The cost of having a job also plays a part in stripping them of their dignity. Transport costs to their job, depending on the amount, could take a huge chunk of their salary, so that at the end
I
of the
mostly
day,
use
they
those
can only pay
supplements
for
to
rent or
help with
food and not
recovery.
both. A government
As
grant could
you
replace their
get older, you
salaries, and they
start
earn more or
to
less the same amount.
feel more
What's also
tired.
helping to pay the bills is, as I said, the U.S. government, in particular, our disability programs for people who are unable to work. Those programs seem to have morphed away from their original humane intention and now seem to provide an alternative income source to regular employment for several millions, for millions and millions of these guys.
If a job doesn't support your basic needs of a home, food, and transport, it wears thin in justifying the effort for this job, especially if you're not getting any experience. And in most cases, if you go into the gig economy, absolutely no security either. All for minimum wage. There's even a new term called quietly quitting, where you do the bare minimum of your job to the point that
It's
you're
been
almost
around
rendered
for a while
useless
now,
and you
this
get fired or
concept of
simply
quiet
quit.
quitting, to
The
be
fact that
honest.
this term even exists shows that attention is desperately needed to solve this problem. And while this is happening, it's becoming more and more common for
Basically
both
just
partners
doing
in
the
a
bare
household
minimum.
to be living the same life, or even with most males' partners actually being the breadwinner. And whilst this isn't necessarily a problem at all, it is leading to some weird modern problems in the household. Men with families are actually switching their roles with their wives, except they're not actually doing what their wives would do if they were to stay at
Again,
home.
what I mentioned
When
earlier,
you
you see, it's exactly what I mentioned earlier. So then this leads to less people having children and propagating families.
Look at what I guess in Britain is called NEET, N-E-E-T. Do you say that also in Australia? Neither employed nor in education or training. When you look at that huge group of well over 6 million prime age men, the story they're telling about their lives is really pretty devastating. It's pretty distressing. They basically don't do civil society. There's almost no worship, almost no volunteering, almost no charitable work. They've got a lot of time on their hands, but they report doing strangely little help around the home or help with other people at home.
Because of the situation, some men may feel a sense of
depressed.
worthlessness and resentment.
I think in a lot
Some
of
men might
cases,
take an hour to clean up the house and fetch the kids.
undiagnosed
but the rest of the day,
depression.
they sleep or play games. In some cases, the wives work and then come home to finish the chores their husbands were meant to do but didn't. And whilst this might cause huge marriage problems, it still feels better off to the husbands. If asked what they do for a living, saying they're on a break or working on a project beats the humiliation of saying they work at McDonald's with a useless degree on their back. Men without families have nothing to lose, so they stop working because no woman would even want them anyway. They can't afford to date, they can't afford a family, and since their own families are supportive, it somehow justifies them giving up and staying at home, rather than facing these societal problems head on. With prices rising, getting hired becoming harder and harder by the day, and inequality becoming rampant within society, most men are just deciding to give up, because instead of facing the hardships of having a job, it just seems so much easier to escape, whether it be terminally being online, playing video games all day, or hiding behind doing chores at home to show they still have a purpose and are doing their best. The point being that for many men in 2024, if they're gonna be disrespected and feel worthless, they may as well choose the easy way out than a battle. If respect had a currency on how it would affect your life directly, you would see a different picture. A man with a job with high pressure, long hours, and doing something that makes him feel degraded would be worth say $100, but staying at home playing games and escaping, all while being with the people he loves, is probably worth $200 because of how it affects him. This explains why more and more men are deciding to drop out of society rather than face it head on, as it just seems to be the easier path. If it's a choice between two paths, one that offers little satisfaction while the other provides comfort, it's easy to see why men are going this route. But the thing is, this is a terrible mistake. And this is creating problems that we've never seen before. If there is no emphasis or any facilitation of the need to aspire to something greater and the game seems rigged to most who are playing it, it's hardly a surprise record numbers of men are dropping out and giving up on the game entirely. The problem is that there's a huge group of men, roughly about 7 million in America between the ages of 25 and 55, who are not working and are actively not looking for work. Now, COVID certainly had a hand in accelerating these figures. One question posed to these dropouts was how many of these men were on pain medication, and almost half of these men admitted to taking pain medication daily. And aside from those who desperately need it, these figures could indicate that men are aimless.
Yeah, that's thankfully a trap or a hole that I've personally never fallen into. Thankfully, it's not. I don't think it's a good road to
numbing
go
themselves
down.
to their new reality. And this is great for society as people don't have to deal with this huge problem. And what's even more shocking is that 40% of these men do have some kind of degree.
What sort of men are in this group? Demographically, education, family structure, ethnicity, who makes up this group?
Surprisingly large, we say, representation of guys with college or even college degrees. 40% of this group has at least some college, and as I recall, about a fifth or a sixth are college grads.
The decision to be in this state is closely related to changing times. We've already discussed the effects of brain rot in another upload, which disabled problem solving in Generation Z and has already presented problems in finding jobs. They are quick to quit at the first of.
Yeah, I mean, when I came out of university, for a while, I mean, initially when I came out, I did a couple of internships, then a couple of temporary contracts, and then at one point it was like there was like a cut in my experience, and I had quite a lengthy period of unemployment. I was searching like crazy. I was applying like crazy. I was doing I had all sorts of different approaches. I had approaches to some applications where I would, really go in depth and spend a lot of time on the applications. Then I had approaches to applications where I just like, just get through the applications quick and just do a quantity over quality approach. And yeah, and like nothing worked, and you talk to all sorts of recruiters and careers advisors, etc. They try to advise this and that, and you find out that a lot of them have no idea what they're talking about because they've themselves oftentimes never been in such a situation. Yeah.
Difficult task and move on to find something else, but what happens when options run dry and they find themselves simply stuck in limbo? Giving up seems to be the next step, and accepting that is easy when they're discouraged by the situation. Working off of surveys, the data compiled indicates that these men are not only not working, but they're cutting themselves off from their communities, or there's no incentivization for them to even have any community in the first place. They're hiding it out because going out would mean meeting new people who might oppose their lifestyles. It makes it uncomfortable. Why leave when you can just aimlessly watch brain rot content and numb yourself with weed or pain medication and stay inside, in the warm comfort of home? And any sexual needs you have can be satisfied with pixels on a screen. This lifestyle is increasingly becoming more and more normal for men in the West. But what's important to note is that men don't want to be this way. It's a horrible lifestyle, it's depressing, it's atomizing. What this really is just a coping mechanism or a form of self-defense against a society that's becoming increasingly hostile to these men. Up until recently, the problem has been invisible. These figures weren't shown in any statistics or surveys because they slipped through the cracks until very recently. So why did they slip through the cracks? Well, it's easy to see. They simply don't fit the victim criteria. Some have degrees, they're in the prime of their lives, and it was their choice to quit. It's easily overlooked and only comes to light as the numbers rise. Nicholas Upstart wrote a book called Men Without Work, and has since exposed and addressed the problems in his book. He says he is trained to look for
Well, it's like right now I've entered my 30s, but in my 20s, I had a very unstable career trajectory, unfortunately. And essentially what that means is, my 20s were not particularly productive. And it wasn't because I was some bad boy or because I was being rebellious or because I was just being an ass or anything. No, I was trying my best to play this game that society imposed on me, but the society was just not allowing me to have any sustained victories, if you will, or even to progress.
hidden in plain sight problems, which is how he stumbled upon this issue. You see, these men are not causing trouble, at least for now, and they don't seem to be drawing any attention to themselves. On the contrary, they keep to themselves. So surveys and statistics just don't include them at all. They don't even register on the scale, and people in society think this is a joke issue. And it's also reasonable to conclude that some of these men may work, but in the underground economy. Work like formal cash jobs, or even shady legal ways of making money. But of course, this is just a minor portion of these men. We need to address the problem head on. How is the situation getting this bad? These men have completely lost their purpose in life. All of their duty, their hopes, their responsibilities, their own dignity and value. It's being completely decimated at the moment. And we're seeing this with the form of radicalization online, growing hatred and division, and a general apathy towards society as a whole. And the longer this is ignored, the harder it's going to be addressed down the line. More men today than ever feel disconnected, disillusioned, and left behind by a world that seems increasingly indifferent to their struggles. While GDP numbers and employment stats may sound like an easy, good solution on paper, especially to government bureaucracies, it will never really fix the reality of the situation for normal people. The real challenge we face today in the West is to find purpose and meaning again, to have any reason to even want to participate and achieve greatness in society. We should focus on creating environments where people can thrive, where beauty, philosophy, and higher noble pursuits are actively encouraged by the cities and countries that we inhabit, which would give millions of men a reason to care again.
To get me out of my own head, I need people around me. Community can give you a power.
Yeah,